Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's been 2 weeks I could not attend, but I'm so happy to be here again. And I hope everyone is enjoying the beta sessions. Today is the last session for this particular batch, and we hope that we were able to give you a lot of information about AI certification. And probably some of you have already passed it or are on your journey to pass it. Now, as an icebreaker question, let me know what is your plans for coming holiday season. Are you going out somewhere, or are you preparing for something, or maybe a DIY project you are going through? Let me know in chat what's your plan. I have a DIY project which I've been stalling for a long time, so probably I'll go with that when the holiday season kicks in. But let me know what is your all plans when it comes to holiday season. Are you traveling, or you would be studying, or you would be just going to meet your family members? Good afternoon, Jay. Thank you for being here, and I could see more people joining in, and hopefully I would be able to hear a lot of informational things from all of you. Today we have a special guest. We would have Dennis Traub, who is going to present us with the chatbot thing related to Amazon Bedrock. And it's a really interesting talk. And he is a developer advocate. I will introduce him in a minute, and we will get started here. Okay, so there is Rajaji is joining. Pawan, you are here. Brajesh, you are here. Thank you. Parna had a good talk in the Pune user group. So if you were able to attend Pune user group, Parna has just returned from there. And then there is a lot of talks about how the BESA is coming up, what things are coming up. And then Shiva will be using studying. That is a good thing. Attending from India today, here for holidays. That's a good to have SB. Maybe bottle up some sunshine and bring it back to UK. It's a horrible weather we are going through right now. All right, without further ado, let me add others to the stage. So I'll introduce you to Dennis first. Dennis, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here on a Saturday.
Thank you so much for having me.
Means we've been hearing a lot about you and about your reinvent talk, so it's good to hear that what you would be presenting, maybe, or maybe some flavor of it. So that would be really interesting. So people
Mhm.
who do not know, I'll ask Dennis to introduce a little bit, and then we will go on to the session.
Well, okay. Again, thanks for having me. I'm Dennis. I'm based out of Germany. I'm German. I've been working for AWS for about 5 years now, but I've been working with AWS for more than a decade. I used to work for AWS partners in the past. A lot of my work was in software engineering and solutions architecture. And currently, I'm mostly really talking about our generative AI services, mostly Bedrock, Bedrock agents, and other things. Um, Including today. And today I'm actually presenting a variation of one of my upcoming reInvent talks that I'm going to give
Mhm.
in Las Vegas. So you're actually the first ones well, I hope it goes well.
Yeah, it should go well. Means we completely trust. Reinvent talks. I especially like it because a lot of preparation goes behind in that 45-minute breakout session. So probably we would be able to see it, and it would be a dry run. You don't need a dry run, Dennis, to be honest. But yeah, it's always good to have a dry run. Shouldn't be an issue. So we'll come back to you in a minute. Let me introduce to the team. We are adding Parna. How are you, Parna? How
Hey,
was your
hi.
Pune user group
Yeah,
meeting?
it was great. So I had two speaker sessions last week. So first, hi to Dennis. Thank you so much for coming and gracing us with your session in Besa. So we'll be the first ones to witness it. So looking forward. And everybody missed Ashish. So I'm sure everybody must be really excited to see
I
him
have
back
to come. Means
after
I'm here
two
for a
weeks.
short period, but I would be still here for a minute or so.
Yeah. So yeah, I did have two great sessions last week. I spoke at the Grace Hopper conference at Bangalore. That went great. That was on cloud resilience, and there was good feedback. And today we again had a AI practitioner boot camp at the AWS Pune user group. That went well
That's
too.
nice.
So
That's
yeah,
good.
so
Good.
welcome any one of you who had joined over there. So I'm sure Dennis is going to like totally make a great show today.
That
All
makes
right.
sense. Thank you so much, Parna. I let
Thank you so much.
Prasad. Prasad, you've been also preparing for your reinvent talk, I guess.
Oh yes, this is always a busy time because coming to reinvent it's never easy, and yeah, during that week it's going to be very busy. But thank you
Mhm.
everyone for joining us for 8 continuous weeks.
Exactly.
BESA every Saturday. It's not easy, and we have been getting a lot of messages that people watch the video later on if they are not able to join the live sessions, which is completely fine. So yeah, today is the last session,
That
and
makes
thank
sense.
you, Ashish, for
Yep.
making the time. I know that you need to leave in the next 10 minutes or so, but you
Yeah,
make up
means
the
I
time
would
to
still be
come.
hanging around for 10 minutes, but yeah, then I have some flight to catch, so I'll be leaving.
Yeah.
But let me add Sharik also. Sharik, thank you so much for holding the fort while I was away, and probably you've been phenomenal, and you've been will be coming up with a lot of quiz sections today. So thank you for that.
Yes, it's a pleasure and it's an honor to do that.
That's a good one. How is Novus Park doing? We want to buy the shares for it, so when it is out, let us know.
I will let you know, definitely, definitely.
So
We
people who
will
do
be
not
the
know,
new
Novus
quality.
Park is yeah, Novus Park is Sharik's new startup. So we'll probably have more details about it. But yeah, means if the shares are out, I would be the first one to buy
Go and grab it.
it. Good one. So thank you everyone, and I'll hand it over to Dennis now, and we will disconnect from the session, but means from the screen, but we are still on to the chat. So any questions you have, feel free, and we would be waiting for any feedback, any suggestions you may have, so that we could improve the coming sessions of BESA. So over to you, Dennis. Thank you so much. I'll share your screen too.
Okay, thank you. Just maybe as a first question to everyone in the chat, have you worked with well, you probably have used ChatGPT and other services or other tools that use generative AI in the backend. But I'd like to know who of you has actually tried to build something with generative AI, with language models or with image generation models. Just real quick, just let me know in the chat. Well, I don't know. I don't know how much lag we do have. Yeah, I have tried. Thanks for your trial. I guess a couple of you have tried. Some may not. I'm going to go into a few things that I found out while working with generative AI myself. Not only Bedrock on AWS, but also GPT and other services. And there are a couple of limitations in generative AI models that I want to talk about, and how we're able to overcome them with patterns that are currently actually just evolving in the industry. So let's go right ahead. Where's my... Here we go. All right. So your AI friend. Everybody, most people probably have this kind of friend who tends to know a lot of things. So when you play games like Trivial Pursuit or something else where it's about knowledge, they always have the answers. They always know everything. And sometimes they don't, but they still come across as if they would. They just start making things up and talking about them so convincingly that you're like, whoa, that isn't true. You know that, right? And the AI that we're working with, that is like this friend. So knows a lot of stuff, has been trained with a lot of material knowledge and everything, but sometimes they may not really know what they're talking about, but they still make stuff up in a very convincing way. And there are a couple of limitations like this. One of the important things as well is they don't have any persistent state. So this model knows all the data that's been trained on, but it doesn't remember any conversations with you. So if you send a message to the model, it responds. And if you send another message, it doesn't remember the first message and its first response, except you put an application on top of it, like ChatGPT, for instance. ChatGPT is not the model. GPT is the model, and ChatGPT is an application on top of that that takes care of memorization, of conversation handling, and things like that. The second issue is very often, and we've seen that in a couple of models, you've got trained biases. That usually depends on the training data. So if the training data is biased, the model will be biased because it relies on the training data. So for instance, many early image generation models mostly used pictures of white male people. So whenever they were asked to create a picture of a person, they most of the time created pictures of white male people. And so many groups that already may be underrepresented have this bias has been amplified by these kinds of models. It's the same with text. If you feed it with a certain text that's available, for instance, there's a lot of research material from the United States, and maybe not so much research material from India or from Europe, where I come from. So the models will heavily bias towards research that has been made in the US, for instance. This can make it difficult because the biases that we just have, we amplify them through the model. So this is something that we have to deal with. I'm not going to show today how we do that, but there are certain ways of doing that as well. A third thing is data staleness. These models, you imagine training one of these models takes 2 to 3 months and a lot of CPU or GPU power. It's very expensive, and you first need to get all the data that you want to train the model with. So you will have a cutoff point. Anything that happened after that, any publications from after that cutoff point are not part of what the model has been trained on. And this becomes very important when you use a model inside of your corporate environment, where you maybe want to train it with your own sales data or your customer data, but you don't have the latest data. You only have the data until a certain cutoff point. And the next thing is, and that's very important, made-up predictions. It hallucinates. Like our friend who may not realize that they don't know. They think they know, or at least want to appear as if they do. So they make up things, and these models. Oh, I'm sorry. These models make up things as well. But to understand why that happens and to understand how we can work around that, I'm going to talk about, I'm going to show you how language models specifically and some multimodal models work. We'll start with base models. If you ask a base model, like the capital of France is, it's just going to return Paris. It's completing the sentence. It's making a prediction, which is, what is the most likely next word in this sentence? That's what the base models do. And on top of these base models, once they're trained, what usually happens is what's called instruction tuning. So because they're only basically completing text, but if you have a conversation with them, you don't want them to just complete text. You want to be able to give them instructions and have them respond to these instructions. There's instruction tuning. So they get trained with a lot of conversations, getting instructions, responding to those instructions. And with that, when we say, for instance, what's the capital of France? The model will understand this is maybe not an instruction, but this is a question, and this question probably wants a response. So the capital of France is Paris. And models like GPT or Anthropic Claude or many Llama, many others have been trained like this. And specifically older models have a lot of hallucinations, but even modern models have them, but we've come up with many mechanisms of reducing that as an issue, but it's still going to be there, so you need to be aware of it. So one of the things that you could ask early models is, what are the 2 capitals of France? And they would come up with something about 2 capitals of France, because what you're telling it is there are 2 capitals of France. So it assumes you're probably right, and then it looks at its data, seeing, oh, well, there's Paris, of course, but then there's also Strasbourg, which is kind of a capital of the European Union. So there are 2 capitals in France. The user wants to know the 2 capitals of France, so we'll just make these 2 the capitals of France. And that's what usually happened. And what we do to circumvent this, to prevent this, is we're forcing it to lie, because our input is priming the model. Our input is giving the model context, and the model doesn't understand what we're talking about. It just effectively completes the sentence in a way that makes it answer a question through instruction tuning. We fix that through guardrails and checks. So newer models would respond in a different way. They would respond with, France has only 1 capital city. So it checks our assumption first before actually responding. That would be a check or a guardrail, making sure that it's not telling anything that's just factually inaccurate, or maybe use foul language or anything like that. So what's being put on top of this model is a lot of guardrails, checks, making sure that what it gives back reduces bias or doesn't hallucinate that much or doesn't expose any personally identifiable information, for instance. If the models have been trained and part of the training data was a lot of PII, by accident maybe, we don't want it to be exposed, so we might put in guardrails and checks that filter out what looks like PII. And that's a good point, Salita. Our prompts need to be correct and clear. And I'm going to talk a lot about prompting today and how we can make sure they are correct, clear and accurate, and better in a sense of helping the model understand what we need. And one of the things, just real quick, that I would like to mention before I go into the details is there's two ways of thinking about generative AI. One of the ways thinking of it like, well, they make so many, we can't really use them because they make so many mistakes, they get so many things wrong, there's a lot of hallucinations, and all that stuff. That's a very valid way of thinking about it. However, on the other side, what I try to do is think about it this way. Whenever it does not respond in the way I wanted, I made a mistake. I didn't really tell it what I wanted it to. It's just like with my spouse. When I talk to my spouse and she doesn't really understand what I'm saying, it's not her fault. It usually is me. It's a communication issue, and I may not have made myself clear enough. And it's the same thing with these models. Because then when I look at myself and try to understand what could I do better, then I'm able to leverage the model with all its limitations. And the limitations are there. But if I say, well, these models don't work, they're wrong, I can't use them, I don't use them, then I'm going to lose out from professional perspective, because other companies, other developers are going to use these models. If I don't, I may fall behind. So what's very important is really to make sure that you think about it this way. And that was just a quick side note. So how do they work? We have the model. We give in text, what is the capital of France? And the text predicts the response. It continues the sentence if it's just the base model, or it follows the instruction, answers the question if it has instruction tuning by just returning some text. The capital of France is Paris. And what we can do is we can use something called temperature. If you apply temperature, or you set the temperature of the model, you change the randomness, you change the creativity. The baseline is 0. So with 0, it's mostly deterministic. It's not actually deterministic. It's still a stochastical model. It's working with probabilities, but it doesn't go too far off track. But if you turn up the temperature, you effectively tell it, you broaden the number of possible next words in a prediction, and the higher the temperature, the higher the creativity. So if you wanted to use it for programming or for outputting structured data, you would set the temperature quite low. But if you want to use it for creative writing, to come up with ideas, for brainstorming, you might want to turn the temperature up. And with a higher temperature, well, that was wrong. With a higher temperature, it may respond to what is the capital of France with, oh, it's Paris, such a beautiful city. And that's what you do with temperature and other parameters like top K and top P. I'm not going to go into them that much. I think temperature for a start is a very good point to experiment with. So the thing is, these models, they do not really understand language. They do not really use words. They are mathematical models. They are probabilistic. They're a cloud. They're a big cloud of numbers. And these numbers are called embeddings. So every text somehow needs to be translated into numbers. And Also, the output is going to be numbers, which is then again turned into text. And these embeddings, they can be any type of data. Could be images, could be video, could be text, could be audio, could be anything, which is converted into numbers so that the model is able to understand. I'm using that term. The model doesn't really understand anything, but I'm using that term to understand what you're putting into it. And these things could be the text could be, for instance, two things like coffee and milk. And coffee and milk are somewhat related. Both are liquids. Both are something that people can drink. And the model does not know what coffee is. It also doesn't know what milk is, but it does know that coffee and milk are somewhat related. They are pretty close to each other. And this is how the model understands relationships between words. We may have another word like cappuccino. Cappuccino is also a liquid, which many people drink. And it's closer to coffee than milk. And it's also closer to milk than coffee. Actually, it sits somewhere in between because it's about likely related to both of those. So the model is able to understand cappuccino sits in between these two. That may mean that you can make cappuccino out of coffee and milk. That could be an inference that the model could now make. And if we turn that into numbers, we effectively turn that into vectors. And now we're looking at a two-dimensional space with an x and a y-axis, and every word is somewhere in this two-dimensional space, and the positions, the coordinates are the vectors of these models. So coffee would be 3.5, cappuccino 4, 3, milk 5, 2. And using the x and y coordinates, we can see whether they're closer together or whether they're further apart. But the thing is that relationships between words, you cannot just map relationships between words on a two-dimensional space. In German, we have the word Mutter, which is used in two contexts. First, being mother, like my mother, the person who brought me into the world, but it's also used as a nut which you put on bolts or screws. And if you would move it close to mother close to person or family, and would move it close to tools at the same time, the model might infer that people or family and tools are closely related as well. So to avoid that, we need another dimension. So we have one dimension which shows the closeness to family, and another dimension which may show the closeness to tools, but actually tools and family would be very far apart in that other dimension. So what we actually do is we use many dimensions. Most of the time, we use hundreds, sometimes thousands of dimensions. So every word or token, I'm using that interchangeably here. Don't worry too much about it. It's not technically accurate. Many words consist of multiple tokens, but I'm using it just like this. Every word has in a 1024 dimensional space has 1024 numbers, and words can be related to each other using all these numbers that they have. And that's how these models understand what is close to each other and what's not so close to each other. It still does not understand what these words mean, as it has no concept of meaning. It only has concept of closeness to each other. So what we put in is a bunch of numbers. And what we get out is a bunch of numbers. And what we have in front of the model and on the other side is a so-called tokenizer and detokenizer, which turns the text into tokens and which turns the response tokens into text again. And these tokens can be anything. They can be images, they can be sound, they can be videos, they can be all kind of stuff. And multimodal models have been trained with a lot of input material, which has been turned into these embeddings, into tokens, and maybe an image has annotations telling in text what's in this image, or a video in text what's in this video. And so the embeddings represent, again, closeness of an image of a person with the word person. And this is how they effectively work. One of the things that's really important, and I mentioned that before, is that models have no memory. They are trained on a certain set of data, and that's it. So whenever you invoke a model, you wake it up, it gets the input, tokenizes the input, looks what's close to it, predicts output, and that output goes back to the calling application, and the model just shuts down again. It doesn't remember the interaction. So if we ask it, what is the capital of France? It's gonna respond with something like, the capital of France is Paris. And if our next question is, what about Sweden? It may respond with, oh, Sweden is a nice country, because it does not remember the first part of the conversation. The way we deal with that is by actually taking the entire prior conversation and taking that as an input, telling the model, well, originally the user asked, what's the capital of France? You responded, the capital of France is Paris. Then the user asks, what about Sweden? And then the model is able to infer that you want to know about the capital of Sweden. And this is how we apply memory. And I'm going to show that in a little more technical way in a minute. But first of all, let's go back to the limits of language models. As I said, they don't have memory nor persistent state. They may have trained biases, and we have to work around them using better training data, but also guardrails and checks. The data may be stale, and it makes up predictions. It has what we call hallucinations. So the question is, how can we actually upgrade these models? And this is, especially as a solutions architect or a software engineer who's working with this is really important to understand. And it's also important to understand the differences between these respective approaches. The first is in context learning. It's also called prompt engineering. I'm going to show you how that works. The next one is retrieval augmented generation, or short RAG. You're going to hear that a lot, where you work with knowledge bases, or maybe with tools like using an API. And this is what this presentation, the title is about, connecting your AI to the real world. The next one would be fine-tuning. And fine-tuning means, excuse me, fine-tuning means that you take a model, a base model with instruction tuning, and then you retrain it with very specific, with your domain data, with whatever you needed to know. But fine-tuning means that the model loses a lot of its generic capabilities, and it becomes very specialized into what it's being fine-tuned on. And fine-tuning takes a lot of time, and it's really hard because the data you use needs to have you need to have really good data quality, because whatever you train into the model, it's in there. You don't get it out anymore. And one of the important things is, especially if you use customer data, if you want to train the model with your actual customer data as a company, you're never getting that out again. And this is especially in the EU and the European Union. This can be a severe issue. I don't know about other places like India or the United States, but here we have the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, which says that a person has a right to be forgotten. So I could go to any company that stored any data about myself and legally ask them to remove my data, any information that they have, and they have to do that. But if they have trained my data into their model, they would have to throw the entire model away, if I ask for that, and train a completely new one without my data. And that's just not feasible. So fine-tuning is something that we should only apply if we really need to, because it's very expensive, it's very complex, it's very time consuming, and if you train it with data that needs to be removed from the model, that is really hard because you just can't. And the other thing, which is similar to fine tuning, is continued pre-training. This is where you have a general model like Llama or Anthropic Claude or GPT, and you add additional training data on it and keeping its general capabilities, basically extending its capabilities. Same thing, training is very expensive. Training takes a lot of time, needs good quality data, and whatever you train into the model, you're not getting out again. So if you look at this, let me see, I've got my mouse here. If you look at this, actually, this is not at scale. So in context learning would be, when it comes to time, cost, quality, complexity, in context learning would be very flat down here. RAG and tool use would be maybe like, oh, I don't know why that happened. And these two would go all the way up. And there's one more that I don't even have on this slide, is training your own model. Training your own model is the most expensive thing you can do. And if you're not OpenAI or Anthropic or Amazon or any one of the other big companies who specialize in that, you maybe shouldn't. All right. I hope that makes sense. Let's go to in-context learning, the first one, the easiest one, which is also known as prompt engineering. If we look at basic prompting, in terms of code, all we do, and this is actual Python code that you use if you use Amazon Bedrock. You create a client, a Bedrock runtime client, in the region that you want to use, and then you have the prompt. The prompt is just the user input. I'm going to Las Vegas. I'm flying on next Saturday. So a week from now, I'm going to fly to Las Vegas for reInvent. I'm really excited about it. But actually, all I heard is I've never been. So I heard it's in the middle of the desert. Right now, we have snow outside. It snowed today for the first time this year, which is really nice. My kids love it. They made their first snow, what's it called? Snowman? And they really like it, but that's German weather. I heard Las Vegas is in the desert. I don't know. Is it hot? Is it not? Is it cold? I have no idea. Would it be a good time to visit Las Vegas this month? And what I do is I create a messages array, a list of messages, which contains a message, which is user, me, and it contains the prompt. I don't know why these things are happening. Never mind about them. So every message can be from a user or the assistant, so it could be the response, and it contains content, which could be a text or an image or video or audio or anything. So I just add my prompt, and I send it to the Amazon Bedrock Converse API. In this case, I want to use Anthropic Claude 3 Haiku, which is a good enough model. I don't need to use any more expensive model because I would assume that Haiku usually knows the weather in Las Vegas, what it usually is like. And then I get the response and I just get the text from the actual response from the model. And that might look like this. June can be a decent time to visit Las Vegas if you don't mind the heat. The thing is, it's November and it's going to be December. It's not June right now. So it does not understand. I told it this month, but how does the model know what this month actually is? And that's where we add some context. I could just tell it as part of the prompt, but then I might have to tell it every time. Or if I create a chatbot or any application that somebody else is going to use, they would have to know that they have to add the date to anything where they want to know anything about the date. So what I can do as an application developer is add a system prompt. So with anything that's being sent to the model, I may add, actually, by the way, today's date is today, and also your travel assistant. And send this as part of a system message. So I'm telling the model whenever I'm invoking it with the actual user message, I'm telling the model, by the way, the actual date is today, and you are a travel assistant. So in the system prompt, I'm able to prime the model, to tell the model which role it needs to play, the information it needs to know to be able to accurately respond to any inquiries. And in this case, it might respond with, well, November, because that would contain today's date is, what is it, November 23rd in 2024. So it knows the date. It knows the question about this month. So it understands, again, through the relationship between the tokens that it has in its training data. It understands, well, the user probably asking about November. And November can be a good time because it's milder weather, smaller crowds, as long as you don't go during Thanksgiving, which is this week. So luckily I'm flying on Saturday, Thanksgiving is on Thursday, and maybe at least part of the crowd may have gone by then. So we have the system prompt. But we talked about another thing before, like conversations. How do we tell the model, how do we let the model know what we already talked about? And this is by, when we go through the schema that we had before, so we input something into the model responds with something, and we feed back the response into the input. So we create a conversation history that gets larger and larger. With every invocation, it just appends what we asked, what the model responded, and our next questions. So the conversation history is always growing, and that's why in code, we have a messages list or array, which then consists of my original user message, the response from the model, my next user message, and in this case, the system prompt may have told the model, you're a travel assistant, and to help your users better, you may want to ask some questions to understand what they like to do. So your first response might be, well, what type of activities do you like? So that the customer can then respond with, I like outdoor activities, or I like concerts. So that the actual response is better fits the actual user, and it's just not generic. And we just sent this messages array to the API, and also the system prompt and the temperature and the model idea, and the response would be, well, great, November can be an excellent time to visit Las Vegas because the mild weather is ideal for outdoor activities. And this is how we get the model to give good responses, taking data information into account, understanding whether it may actually first ask the user something, because it may need more information to give a more specific and less generic response, or that it may need external information like what time is it, or what date is it today. And this is how prompt engineering in context learning works. And this is, I think it's a science in itself, and every model responds slightly different. And it very much also depends on the training data. And this is something where you really have to experiment, but you can do a lot by doing this. You can add a lot of context to the model to really make sure it understands what you need inside of your application or in a conversation. So this is in context learning. The next one I'm going to talk about is retrieval augmented generation and tool use. I'm not going to talk about these two because I think that is very much outside of the scope for the beginning. I would really, really recommend doing as much as you can with these. Let me put it this way. You've got this friend who's very good at Trivial Pursuit, and they also tend to make up answers. And if you want to train them, if you want to help them better understand things that it doesn't understand, for instance, you're playing a game around a specific business domain like legal or logistics or HR or aviation, the base models don't have a lot of domain-specific knowledge, and you would like to add domain-specific knowledge. There's two ways to train your friends on the domain-specific knowledge. You could either send them back to university, have them make a degree, have them make a PhD, and and whatever you need, but that takes a lot of time. It costs a lot of money. And they may also forget other things because they really focus on that specific model. And that's what you would do with fine tuning or continued pre-training. But you could also send them to the library, tell them exactly where they can find the books that contain the information so that they can go to the library, get the book, come back and read from the book. And this basically is what RAG does. You tell the model where it finds the information. You don't train the model with the information. You tell it where it finds the information. And that's what we're going to look at now. RAG, retrieval augmented generation, and tool use is how you can actually connect the AI to the real world. If we look at the model that we had before, we have input, output, the conversation history. And when we use RAG, we actually add it to the input. The model itself does not use RAG. Your application does. So your application adds information to the input, to the actual context, which is why it's called augmented. You augment by adding it to the context, and you retrieve it from somewhere. RAG is most of the time used in the context of vector stores, of vector databases, but it also includes just adding a text file, just adding a JSON object or an XML document or anything. You can just add a document. You can just add a document to the context, and that effectively is RAG, where you say, I need additional information, and the information is stored in this document, or I need to add information about the code base that I'm working on when I'm using an AI assistant that helps me with coding. I'm just adding my code base to the context. Can become quite expensive because the larger the context, the more tokens you have, and you usually pay by the token because the more tokens you have, the more GPU time is needed to actually use and work with the information. But there are also mechanisms and ways to compress the context by, for instance, summarizing specific information. But let's just say we have a text file. In this case, we have a file that has travel info. It's a JSON file. It's structured travel info. And what we just say is we store all the data from that file in a variable called context. And we augment the prompt by saying, based on the following information, answer the user's question. And here's the information. And we just add the context to information. And we add the user prompt, which is this month a good time to go to Las Vegas? We add it to this. And I'm using XML here. That's a specific preference of Anthropic models because they're trained a lot with XML tags. Other models have other preferences. So it's really helpful to learn about the specific models and how they've been trained. So what's the best way to provide them with the information they need? And for Anthropic models right now, it's XML tags. I'm calling Haiku, and I'm actually sending it the augmented prompt, which includes the context, and it includes the user prompt. And it also includes the system prompt, which contains today's state. And the response in that case could be, based on the info provided, the weather in Las Vegas during the winter months is mild, with an average of 20 degrees Celsius, which is stored in the travel data JSON. And therefore, November, it knows November because it has the system prompt with the current date, would be a good time to visit the city. So I'm augmenting the prompt with specific data. And depending on what is actually being asked for, I could use different information and inject it into the context. And this can be done with just files, just pieces of text or JSON or XML data or CSVs or anything, any kind of structured or maybe even unstructured data. Very often you use a semantic database, you use a vector store where your data is actually also stored as embeddings. So it's vectorized, just like it's being done up here. You're vectorizing your CRM data or your whatever you're working with it in your domain, and your product information stored in that database. And you may have a semantic search where when a user asks about a specific, or when you have a customer support case, which is one of the canonical examples. If you have a customer support case, and somebody calls customer support, and the customer support agent, which may be an AI or maybe a person supported by an AI, they don't want all the customer cases. They want the cases specific to this customer. So what they can do is basically send a search request to a vector store, and the vector store may just return the data that's actually related to that specific customer. And this is what you usually do with semantic databases, what you do with vector stores. You basically take your actual database or data sources and vectorize the data and store it in the vector store. And whenever something changes, you can just vectorize the div and add it to your vector store. So you always have the most current information. The most current user information or most current product information in a catalog or whatever you need. So this is how you would use RAG. You can connect RAG to many different stores and can build an AI-based system that connects to the different stores depending on what the actual use case is, and just get the information that it needs in real time from effectively the real world. And another thing is you can not just use RAG, you can also use tools. You can let the model know that there are certain tools that it can use to get the information it needs, or to apply an action, to call an API, to do something with the real world. That could be using read or write APIs, could be accessing databases, sending a SQL request to an actual existing database to retrieve information, or maybe even modify information in the database. Could be SQL, could be NoSQL. That could be a web search, could actually browse the internet to get the information and again augment the context with that information. It could be index content, Wikipedia, your own data. It could be internal systems like CRMs or the emails or your Slack history. And this is how you basically can connect the AI to the real world by using RAG and using external tools to connect with APIs, databases, or anything else. And I've got one more example. This is what tool use would look like with Amazon Bedrock. You basically, in addition to the messages and the system prompt and the temperature and everything, you give it a tool config. You tell it you have tools available, and one of those tools is the weather tool. This get spec, in this case, it's just a method I added that returns an a API schema object, which is JSON, which describes the API, tells what does this tool do, what are the parameters, which ones are required, what are the data types, maybe also what does it return. So I give the model the information that it has this tool available, and through the API schema, I tell it how to use this tool. And the model, if it understands tool use, which Claude does, which GPT does, and most modern models actually do, it will send a response, and the response will not be an actual response to the user. It may actually contain a tool use object. And this tool use object then contains the actual argument that should be sent to the tool. So if tool use is in response and somewhere in the tool use, it may say, well, please use the weather tool, because that could be multiple tools. Please use the weather tool. And this is the data that I want you to send to the weather tool. Then you can go to the weather tool. That's what we do here. You call it, you send it the arguments, or the argument in this case, city, and the weather tool, this API, may return a JSON object containing the weather information, the forecast for next week in Las Vegas, for instance, and you just append it to your next message. So the next user message contains a tool result, including a tool use ID, which is inside of the response as well, so the model is able to correlate, and it includes the weather info as JSON. So, and then you send the entire thing back to the model. So what's happening here is you send the user request to the model. The model realizes, well, I don't know the weather in Las Vegas, but I just got informed by the request that there is a tool that I can use, and I only need to tell it the city. So, well, I need the weather for Las Vegas. So I'm going to tell my user or the application that uses me to use the weather tool with the input Las Vegas. And this comes back. This is the assistant response. Then I take that. I realize, all right, there's tool use in there. I'm going to call my tool, and I'm going to take this to send it back to the model. And the model sees, all right, the first message was the user asking for the weather in Las Vegas. My response was, well, I need you to use the tool. Then I got back from the user, here's the response from that tool. And now I know the weather in Las Vegas, so I can then create the final response, which may look like this based on next week's weather forecast. The temperature in Las Vegas will be sunny with a high of 19 degrees, and so forth. Let me just look at the question here. Really appreciate showing code when explaining these concepts. Helps me know how user requests actually go to model. Questions: how do I write such sample code or a sample bot and test the RAG chatbot? We unfortunately don't have the time for me to respond to this. This is a very important question. Just real quick, what I like to do is really just create a Jupyter notebook and just try going back and forth and try seeing what happens. That works if you use Python. It may be different if you use other languages, but that's what I usually do. Just create a Jupyter notebook, go back and forth, and in the next step, maybe even automate this. So when I find a working sequence, I may actually write something like a test, a regression test, that I may run against next iterations of the model or next iterations of my system prompt to see if the response and the back and forth with tool use or RAG still works the way I expect it to. And now this is basically the mental model. We have the model, we send context into the model, we get a response, we feed that response back into the context. We may augment it through RAG. The response may ask for tool use, so we send the tool response back to the context and go back and forth. And this basically is the loop of using generative AI models inside of any application without having to do your own training. And the most important thing is, remember, LLMs are really powerful. They have a number of limitations, but if you apply in-context learning, prompt engineering, if you apply tools, tool use, if you apply RAG, you're able to really connect to the real world, connect it to your specific data, effectively provide anything it needs to solve your specific use case. And that's it. Thank you so much. You can find me on Twitter, X, not so much anymore, to be honest, because I don't want to go into politics, but I'm more using LinkedIn by now. So if you want to reach out, you can on Twitter. I may not be using it that much, but I will definitely respond on LinkedIn. Thanks for having me. I hope you learned something new. I don't know how much time we have for questions. I would just give it back to the team.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Let me add Prasad to the stage as well. There we go. And Prasad, now again you're on mute.
Oh, thank you, Dennis. It was really good session. I learned a lot.
Great, thanks.
Wonderful session. I think the audience was too busy, concentrating on what you were telling, and they were not asking as many questions as they generally ask. So looks like it was really engrossing session. So thank you for that. So how was it for you, by the way, Dennis? Like as a dry run, did you like was it useful for you personally? How was it?
Oh, it was very useful. It was great as a dry run because I realized I exactly hit the time that I wanted to hit. I had to rush a little at some point, so I'm going to tweak the reinvent session. But the reinvent session is being different anyway. I'm not going to talk so much about the things. I'm going to show some actual code. So it's going to be it's a developer talk. So it's more really towards developers where we actually look into code examples and play around with them. But I think for me, it was very helpful because it helped me. Again, every time I explain something, I realize, well, maybe there's something I didn't really understand yet. I may want to look into that again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
One sec.
Love the examples, Dennis. So it was nice to see the action while you were updating the code and we could see the output live. So I think that's what people really loved to hear. Thank you so much for that.
Great. Appreciate it.
Wonderful.
Awesome. We are almost right on time to start our next section, which is.
So I think we have to learn a thing or two, Prasad, from Dennis when it comes to time management. Because this is what it should be,
Yeah.
Anyways, all right. So the next section we have is because it is a final day, so we thought we will give you some sort of taste or some feel of the questions. What kind of questions you can expect, and this is more of the interactive session. What we are going to do is we will go ahead and present a quiz, and this is where you can interact. It's not just a presentation. Let me first put that. So Purna, you are going to be with me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we will do, let me remove Prasad and Dennis. Thank you so much once again, Dennis, for being here.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Right, so there we go. All right, so here is how it is going to look like. So obviously this is kind of to give you, as I said, a taste of what actual questions would look like. Ashish was, kind enough to help us with those questions. He gave me a few questions to set up on in this quiz format. This is, again, most of these questions are from his boot camp, which you would know already. So here is how we are going to do about it. So this is where the same thing which we did last week. So go ahead and join the session there. You have the QR code. You can go to menti.com, put in that code. It will take you to the same place. What we will do, we'll give you like maybe 20-30 seconds for everyone to go ahead and join in. Once you are in, what we will do, I'll show you the questions one by one. We'll probably wait for 20-30 seconds. And then, once we have the right answer on a screen, Parna will go ahead and explain, why that was the right choice, why others was not the correct choice. Those kind of things we'll discuss. And hopefully we will come. I think we have 10 or 11 questions probably. And what we will do, we'll spend maybe next 15-20 minutes on that. And if post that, we will discuss questions, we'll discuss any of these things. What are we going to do next? Because this is, again, the final day of this cohort. So it will be open for discussion for, what other things you want to see in the next thing. And I'm seeing already people joining in.
Right. Are you able to see the count, Sharik, of people who've already joined in?
Yeah. Oh no, I can see the likes, not the count. Let me see if I have this.
Yeah, people, please join in, not only like.
I think probably once they are in, only then they can like probably. So yeah, I can see 5, 6, 8. Oh yes, there we go. Let me. open that. So by the way, kind of, we are experimenting with this platform, folks, Menti. So uh, getting familiar as we use it, right? So
Yeah, I used it a couple of times during my training, and it's quite a nice platform.
it's a nice one. Yeah, yeah.
Have you
I like
used it too, Sharik? Do you use it currently as well?
I do. I do. I'm using it for some time now, maybe last couple of months, and I really like the interface and
Yeah, it's
the
quite
interactive,
engaging.
quite engaging. Exactly, exactly. All right. Okay, so still have few folks. Meanwhile, while we are waiting for everybody to join in, Parna, how was the session for you? The two of them. You had two sessions this week, right?
So one was on cloud resilience. So that was good. Shared a lot of tips and tricks to build resilient applications. And that was really nice. So about 30 odd minutes, and met a lot of other industry leaders there, and it's good to hear about everybody's perspective. But I must say, AI ML was the show stealer.
Mhm.
So they actually it actually stole all the audience from the cloud domain. But yeah, it was interesting. It was
Mhm.
a great event and really well organized. So there's an
Yeah.
organization called Anita B which organized it. So really well done.
Mm.
And today's session was also good. Today we had a AI boot camp at the
Mhm.
AWS user group, and that went well, really well. And accompanying me was AWS ambassador, Abhinivesh Jain from Wipro. So
Mm.
he also shared a lot of insights. I think it went well.
Okay. Okay.
So
Wonderful.
have everybody joined in
Yeah,
already?
a lot of you. So don't worry, Pawan. Actually, once
Yeah.
I start showing the questions, you will be able to see and start responding. So let me, in fact, go ahead and do that. So let's see if I put in the first question. Let's see how does it look like. Are you able to see the questions there now?
Uh, so can some of you reply on the chat if you all are able to see the questions? Okay, so I'm seeing yeses. So Sharik,
Mhm.
yes, yeah, and they're answering, right? You can see
Yeah,
it's
now we
live.
are.
Yeah,
Okay,
great, great.
perfect. All right,
So
perfect.
are we going to time them, Sharik, or
I
just
mean,
wait for people to?
not like a stopwatch. Yeah, give them like maybe
Yeah.
20-30 seconds should be fine. And then we have another 20-30 seconds to for you to just explain why that was correct. Or, I mean, if it is straightforward question, then I think not a
Okay.
problem. But if there
All
is
right.
anything you want to
So are you going to
highlight,
show the answer right now or at the end?
what do you think? I think let's do it one by one because then again we have to
Okay.
come back and
Yeah, yeah. I think
so
that's
let's
best.
do it now. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we can see there is a clear, majority.
Mhm. Which is the second option. Okay.
Yes.
Mhm. All right. So three, two, one, go. All right. So let me show you the right answer there. As you can see, which
Okay.
is most of you got this right. So Parna, why do you
Yeah.
think? Go ahead.
Yeah. So as we can see in the question, the keywords over here are is the easiest way to build and scale AI applications, right? So there are many ways you can build Gen AI applications on AWS, but we'll have to see which is the easiest way to do. Now in SageMaker Jumpstart, it is easier, but not the easiest. You can pick from some open source models. There's a foundational model hub from where you can choose, but still you have to do the hard work of fine tuning it and then deploying it, etc. Whereas in case of the second one, Bedrock, you can think of foundational models as a service, right? You just have an endpoint, write a few lines of code. You just saw what Dennis was doing, right? As simple as that. and you can easily create an application there. In case of the third one, here Lambda and S3, you'll have to write too much of logic over there, so it really doesn't make life easier.
Right.
And the fourth one, building SageMaker is usually used to build a ML model right from scratch. Okay, so if we have some foundational model which already do that work, the heavy lifting for us, why should we do all that work? So clearly, the second one is the winner,
Right.
and hence Bedrock. Yeah.
So option 3 and 4, like C and D, they are technically like incorrect options. Between A and B is the more appropriate.
Hmm.
A is also correct, but B is more appropriate. Is that the
Yeah.
kind of the thing? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So let's go ahead and go to the next question. All right. Floor is all yours, folks. Go ahead. This was, I think, one of the first sessions which Parna and Ashish, you took, right?
Hmm.
In this
Yeah.
course. Yeah,
So the smallest unit.
Mhm.
So we spoke about when we actually send out a prompt, what actually happens to that prompt.
I think this was one of the very first classes when we discussed about all these different words,
Yeah.
context, what is prompt, what
I
is it?
love the visualization which is happening.
Yeah.
It looks very fancy.
Yeah.
All right. So lots of people are sticking together, huddling together at one place.
It's like majority wins or what? All right.
It is when we play four corners, right? Everybody looks at where everybody's running after the music stops.
Okay. Nobody for LLM, yeah?
And nobody likes LLM.
All right. So 3, 2, 1, go. Let me go ahead and show that. So yes, majority wins. Go ahead, Parna.
Yeah, so in the first option, context is the information that you provide in your prompt. It is not exactly what the information is broken down into. So you provide a context like these are the examples. Give me a summary of so and so. You ask, right? Or this is my resume. Shorten it and give me. So that's the context you're providing. It's nothing to do with the breaking down into basic units. Token is obviously the right answer, so I won't go into that. Prompt is the input that you give to your model, so it's not the basic unit. And LLM, as you know, these are the language based foundation models, they are not the basic unit.
Right. Perfect. All right,
Right.
let's move ahead. And there we go. Mhm.
Okay, people are undecided, so it's going up and down. Does it give you them the option, Sharik, to change their opinion, or once it's done, it's done?
No, once they have submitted, I don't think they can change.
Okay. Okay.
But I've not tested this as a user. In fact, somebody,
Huh.
Pavan, can you let us know? Pavan, Solita,
Are
Ashok,
you able to change your decision?
once you have
Does it allow?
submitted, does it give you an option to change this option? I never thought about that actually. So that would be a good information. No, you cannot. Thank you very much.
So Swami
Response.
has a good
Suggestion.
suggestion that he's saying don't show them. But the fun is lost if you don't show them.
Exactly.
I know people tend to suddenly look at the screen and say
Yeah.
that, oh, maybe I should have chosen that.
Exactly. No, and there is one more thing. This is again one of those. Think of it like in an AI bias format, Swami. How about if the majority is wrong?
I know.
Right? It's quite possible that
Follow the
everything
herd. Don't
follow
follow
the
the
herd.
herd.
Exactly. All right. So let me stop there. It's more than a minute. So there we go. So of course, this is one of those situations. Majority is not right in this case. Purna, go ahead.
So over here, so the maximum number of text, actually in the terms of tokens. So what we call as a context window. It's the total number of input tokens and output tokens. This is just to contain the amount of tokens. Otherwise, what will happen is if you don't contain it, your LLM could generate a very big output. And remember, you get charged based on the number of tokens. So you should always define a context window. So that's the maximum number of text. Under the hood, it is actually the number of tokens that the model will consider while taking in as well as in outputting. So that was the right answer. And token was incorrect because we saw token is actually the basic unit that the text is broken down into. Prompt is the actual input and the context and the instructions that you're giving to your model. So that's why it's not the amount of text. And yeah, LLM, now everybody knows about it. That's a model itself.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, and thank you, Brajesh.
Pawan, you found the question confusing.
Pawan, where is
Looks
it?
like Pawan, you are in that red 50%.
Right. It could be. I don't know. We'll
Yeah.
take a look at it
Yeah.
again. That's
Yeah.
fine. That's fine. All right. Go ahead, folks. So yeah, I'm seeing pretty much everybody is
It's
choosing, but
divided, right? Yeah.
no, this is two responses. So just want to make sure everybody knows this is
Oh,
not a
wow, it's
single.
a tie. Oh, now somebody decided to pick one of
Yeah.
the others.
Mhm. So this is
I
where
think
you.
you're just trying to be different, maybe.
Yeah. No, no. I mean, this is two responses, right? So.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that there's somebody who's picked something
Right, right.
speech to text.
And that's fine. That's fine. So we have text, automated text, image to text. All right, let me stop there and let me show the responses. And yes, this time it's all good. So B and
It's
C.
all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have correctly identified the two options. So speech to text is actually what we call as transcribe. So we have a managed AWS service called transcribe that converts speech to text. It uses natural language understanding and automatic speech recognition. So that's how it converts. And if you see those captions which we get in our videos, right, that's how it happens. That's also an example of transcription, what we call. So that's why it's incorrect. It doesn't make sense here. The other two are obviously correct. Facial recognition, the most simple thing is when we show our faces to our mobile, it unlocks it, right? So recognition is a service which does object and image recognition, and it can also identify the content within the image, right? So if you're showing a passport or whether you're showing a driving license, it can even identify the context. That's what it means.
Right. I think
And the
just want
last
to
one.
highlight at one point here. Sorry, Purna, go ahead. I cut you off there.
Yeah, I was just saying that why automated text translation, because we have a service called AWS translation, so that's why it's
Hmm.
incorrect. Yeah, Sharik, go on.
Actually, that's what I was coming to. Like, if you're planning for the exam in the next 1 week, 10 days, or whenever you're going for an AI practitioner, this portion is going to be really crucial. Like, what do you want to do based on that? Which AWS service is relevant? Where you're going to use SageMaker, where you're going to use Transcribe, where you're going to use Poly. That is something which is going to be very, very crucial. So make sure you have that list. And I think, if I'm not wrong, we have 15, 20 different services, Purna, for each of
Yeah,
those.
yeah, quite a lot of services. So
Quite a
I
lot of.
think last session I had taken up, was it last or last to last? If you want to go and watch that recording where I covered most of the popular ones. There are much
Yeah.
more, but
Hmm.
most of the popular ones, and Sharik correctly said that they're not going to directly give you anything. There'll be a little more context given. This is a simple question what we put here. They'll give you more of a use case kind, and
Yeah.
you'll have to identify which service to use. And usually there is a lot of confusion between I have seen between comprehend and extract. So you
Yeah.
just try to understand those two services well. At least I used to face a lot of confusion which one to choose because they are a little similar sometimes.
Mhm. Do we have a page anywhere, Parna, by the way, official AWS page where we have the list of services and each
Oh,
one does what? I mean, that would be a good thing to add in
yeah.
the follow-up email, probably. Not now, maybe in the follow-up email we can do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe we'll have to check the mail that Ashish. No, my slides are there, and usually Ashish
Ah,
sends out. So we'll have
yes.
to check.
Mhm.
So I think Vin has asked which recording. So this was 2 weeks earlier. If you see uh, there was a session I took on managed AWS services with Shashank. Just look at the playlist. Last few, you'll find that one. And congratulations, Tech Crux. So, Sharik, Tech Crux has passed the
Mhm.
AI practitioner
No, I
exam.
think I think tech
Kudos.
is Shashank, if I'm not wrong.
No, no, that's not
No?
Shashank. Shashank is cloud something.
Oh, okay, okay. So I was like, but
Yeah.
anyways, congratulations. That's right. All right, let's move on to the next question. There we go. Go ahead. Yes, Pawan, you're right. It should be there somewhere. Ashish would have that.
So I'm just trying to look out if there is one page with all of that or no.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, the reason I was asking because we have these pages, right? So if you want to compute all the compute services at one place, all of the databases at one place, I'm assuming that there should be something. Um,
Yeah, so I'm just putting up a link. You might find most of the things there. You can check out the AI services link that I just put in to the chat.
mm, no, I don't see anything yet, Parna.
I put it in the YouTube. You don't see it. I'll put it from here. Okay, I can see it on YouTube. I don't know whether it's gone to LinkedIn or no.
Oh, probably because I'm here.
Hmm.
That's fine. That's fine. You put it, it'll come up
Yeah.
anyways. All right, so let me stop there. It's more than a minute now. And let's see. So 93% is correct. And yes, that's AI hallucination for you.
Yeah, so as you must be aware, hallucination is where you get responses which seem like they are correct, but actually the LLM is imagining things and giving you false misleading information, leading you to believe that it is correct. So that is what hallucination means. The first one, the ability of the model to accurately predict, so it's actually the opposite. It's not accurate, it is inaccurate. It is being more random, and it's using its own creativity.
Correct.
So, if you remember, we had talked about some parameters like temperature, top P, top K. So, if we tweak the temperature too high, it will try to get more creative. So, to avoid getting hallucinations, one way to do is reduce the temperature so you get a more deterministic output. It doesn't start imagining things. And similarly, you reduce the top P and top K also, right?
Mhm. So, Parna,
So
I have
that
a
is.
question here.
Hmm.
So, if you remember when Dennis was showing those demos at the start, he
Huh.
mentioned about that, that what are the two capitals of Paris, and then it started
Ah,
creating
right, right.
the answer. I think that would be one example of hallucination,
Yes,
right? Where it's
yes,
just
yeah,
creating, yeah, okay, good
yeah.
point, good
So
point.
yeah, and I remember he said that he put in more context into the prompt later on. So when you put in more context, that is called inline prompting. So what happens is, because the prompt has more context, it will not imagine things, right? So I
Okay.
think he was trying to give that example that, see, I'm putting in more information, that's why it's giving better output also.
Mhm.
The
Okay.
third one, I did anybody choose the third one? Yeah, the process of refining. So this is actually talking about fine tuning or continued pre-training. This is nothing to do with hallucination.
All right.
And yeah, nobody chose the last one, so I guess you all know it's
Mhm.
incorrect.
All right. And I see, Parna, just to remind you again, I see a couple of folks are telling they don't see it on YouTube as well. So probably you might want to put the link again.
Okay.
Yeah. And meanwhile, what I will do is I'll go ahead and go to the next question. By the way, be careful when you're answering this question, folks. Parna and I had a discussion just before we started this. So just to give you a clue there. No more talking. Okay, this is the first time I'm seeing such a nice distribution. A lot of people are choosing all the options. That's good. All right. Okay. Go ahead, folks. 3, 2, 1, and there we go. So, Parna.
All right. So 1 minute. I was on the other screen. All right. So the first two are correct. So those who've chosen that. So if you see in the question, which of the following business metrics? So the key word over here is business metrics. So this is what is measured by the customer using the service. So what is their business goal? Okay. We are not talking about AI metrics over here. Okay. So I know most of you who got confused with inference time and accuracy, they thought about AI metrics. Okay, so the key over here is which are the business metrics. So in terms of the consumer who's using this, how will they know that the model is working well? So they'll come to know only if their goals are being met. So they, for example, they are using say comprehend to or they are using say Amazon Q knowledge bases to help the support, and that is speeding up the answering of queries, right? So that the average call duration is reducing. So for them, that's a great metric. And if in the financial services they are trying to detect any kind of fraudulent transactions, so the number of detections will indicate that their application is working well. So in terms of business, these two are the correct options and not AI metrics as such. So I hope that's clear for you. And the last one, confusion metrics, that is actually used to measure the outcome of a binary classification model. So it gives you things like the number of positive outcomes or false positives, false negatives, true positives, true negatives. So it gives you those numbers, right? So it's generally used in evaluating classification models. So that has nothing to do over here because we are talking about business metrics. I hope that makes sense. Anything you want to add, Sharik, about confusion metrics?
No, no, not really. In fact, I'm looking at the questions. I have one question from Vin, and there is one question from Swami. Probably we should take those before we move forward.
Ben, Win.
Vin, yeah, yeah, that.
Yeah. So, um, so you definitely need to know about these evaluation scores for the exam. Whether AWS services provide that information, I I'm not sure actually about that. Whether
Mhm.
any of these services do, but but you definitely need to know about this metrics for the exam. There are several questions on
Yeah.
them. So there
So
was a
yeah, I mean,
page
I think
also. Hmm.
answering to Swami's question, you don't need to know the intricate details. How is it done?
Hmm.
But some of the fundamental aspect of it, definitely you would need to know, like what exactly are there, and what do you mean by inference time? What do you mean by accuracy of the model? How do you tweak some of the fundamental? Maybe not too much in depth, but you would know. And I think for Vin's question, you're telling Parna that we need to get back because even I'm not sure
Huh.
See, I'm assuming it would be there in SageMaker, definitely. But how and when, I don't have an authoritative answer on that. So
Hmm.
probably we need to take a look, and I guess we can continue our discussion in Discord channels over there to
Yeah.
take a look. Yeah. All right. Yeah, so I think Biji has come back again. Parna, the link nobody sees there. For some reason,
That's
it's
so
not coming up.
strange. Okay. I'm not sure because I keep seeing it.
Not a problem. I
I'll just put it in the private chat to you, Sharik. See if you can paste
sure,
it.
sure.
Just give me a moment. Because this is a public AWS URL. So
Uh,
can you paste it and see? I don't know why they don't see it.
no, let me quickly do that. Did it go through? I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gone through.
Perfect. Okay. So that would be one good starting point for everybody. Like, we discussed before, that it's very important to understand a specific AI service you want to use versus which AWS managed service is available and does the job for you. So that would be a good
Yeah.
starting point there.
And
Right.
Sharik, I've just put a link for all these metrics where you get an overview of all these important metrics that you need to know for the exam. If can you put that also in the
Sure.
chat, because I'm not sure whether if I put it they'll be able to see it.
No, yeah, there we go. So I think it has gone through, hopefully. Anyway, so let's go ahead and move on to the next question. I think we have another 2 or 3 questions. We are towards the end. There we go. So this should be quick. Let's spend 30 seconds on this. Let's go ahead, folks. We are almost like time, so let's finish it off. Okay,
This should be easy, I guess.
I guess so.
Everybody should get it right. After 8 weeks, I believe everybody should get it right.
Yeah, we are already seeing responses. Okay. All right, so let me go and stop there. And looks like, yes, everybody got this right. Amazon SageMaker is the right answer indeed. And I don't think this requires any explanation,
Yeah,
folks.
yeah, yeah. Because
Okay,
that's the basic definition of SageMaker, right? Build, train, deploy uh,
correct.
ML models,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. All right, so this is the next question. Again, go ahead, folks. Read the question. Let us know. What do you think? Again, this is one of those standard definitions,
Hmm.
so shouldn't be very difficult.
That's a nice one. GK says Besa should be 7 should become a ML associate.
ML associate. So I think you're referring to the new certification which has come up, right? So yeah,
No, I think they want us to rename Besa to that.
yeah. No,
Become.
no, no. I think JK is referring to the seventh cohort, the next cohort idea.
Okay. So yeah, noted.
That's going to be based on 7, right? This is currently 6
Uh,
going on. So I think
Sixth
that's what.
batch, yeah.
Yeah.
What is Esteban asking? Is it like an ID for developers? Which which one? What are you referring to, Esteban? Um, I'm not sure. What do you know, Sharik?
Yeah, I don't get the question. I mean, what is like an ID for developer? That's what I need to know. Uh, my third influencer. Okay. All right. So I think most of the people have answered. Let me stop right there. And yes, hyperparameters is the right answer indeed. Parna, you want to
Yeah.
add anything there?
Yeah, so basically, hyperparameters are used to control and fine tune your ML learning. Okay, so when your machine learning model is in the training phase, okay, this is not at the inference phase. When it's in the training phase, you have to tune these parameters. These are called as hyperparameters. These are different from model parameters, so don't get confused. And some examples of hyperparameters are like epochs. That means the number of times you train. Then there is batch size, so the amount of training data that you're feeding every time, you can control that. And there's another good example, I think, learning rate. So in learning rate is by what proportion you change the weights on each variable, right? So every time when you are running an epoch, you change it by a certain percentage. So by tweaking, there are several more. I have just mentioned three. By tweaking all these, that's why we call it knobs and levers. You try and get the most accurate outcome. So this is used to adjust the training process. So that's why hyperparameters is the correct one. Epoch, like I told you, it is the number of times. If you overtrain it also, it's not a good idea. You have to find that optimal number of times. Confusion metrics, as I had explained earlier, that is just to evaluate classification models. So you get true positives, false positives, true negatives, false negatives, and you get a lot of information from that. Then SageMaker and Bedrock, as you know, these are just services of AWS used to build your uh, generative AI application. So that's not the correct one.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah,
Let's see.
and
We are in the final one or two questions, so let's go ahead.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, folks.
So Esteban was asking about SageMaker. So SageMaker has an inbuilt ID. So I think you can have Jupyter Notebook and you can write some Python code. Anything else they can use, Sharik? So it does
I
have
mean,
a inbuilt ID within
it
it.
has
You
its
can
own
even have,
ID, right? And in fact, you can use your existing Jupyter notebooks into.
yeah.
You can import those into SageMaker. So SageMaker, if you talk about a service, it's a lot of capabilities rolled into
Hmm.
one. Right, so it's quite a big, comprehensive service, and if you're talking about machine learning in general, right from importing the data all the way to production deployments, it kind of helps you end to end. It has got a lot of things inside it, so it's a big
Right.
service. ID
Yeah.
is definitely a part of it.
One of
Uh,
them. Yeah.
One of them, yes. Yeah. All right. So again, I see answers there, and
Yeah.
let me check
Everybody's picked the third
the
option.
third option. Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
I hope
you
you
got
picked
it all
because you
right.
know it, not
Yeah.
because other people picked it.
So clearly the first option, models that learn from data that is not labeled, as well as clustering algorithm, this is a typical case for unsupervised learning. So you are not really giving them examples and telling them this is what the output should be. You are feeding it a lot of data. It will internally learn from the data patterns and relationship between the data and figure out how to classify them. So clustering algorithms basically helps to segment. Okay, so it will split up. So for example, it can split up the customers of a retail application, who are the frequent spenders, and the ones who just come in, browse and go away kinds. Okay, so those are for unsupervised learning. And the last one, it focuses on maximizing cumulative rewards by trial and error. This is reinforced learning. So that's the type of learning where it takes feedback from the environment, and if it is a positive feedback, it gets rewarded, and if it's a negative feedback, it was the incorrect one, then there is a penalty. So based on that reward response, it keeps getting more intelligent. So that's why this is not supervised learning, that is reinforced learning.
All right. Thank you, Parna. So let's go ahead and move on to the next question. And just for everybody's benefit, we have the two next questions. This is the second last, and we have one more question. So go ahead and answer, and we should be able to wind up in the next 5-7 minutes. Go ahead, folks.
So if you were listening to me in few seconds ago, you will get this correct. So more exam questions. So you will find them by some of the popular instructors who have their practice exam sets. Plus you have exam questions even on Skill Builder, so you can check that out as well. So Skill
Yeah.
Builder also has practice. I think two, no, Shari? There are there's a short one and a long.
I mean, at
The
least
one
one.
with
Look, definitely
Yeah,
when
at
I was
least one is there. Yeah. So
so
free, there is at least one. If you
yeah.
go for a subscription, then you get a larger number of questions.
Mm.
So Ashok says, I remember dog example when I see the reinforcement learning. Yeah, correct. Yes, I remember Ashish had put up that image, right? Like, if you show it a goodie, then it will probably put its paw up. If you don't, then yeah, I could correlate. I remember he had given that example.
All right, so I'm going to stop, folks. Let me go ahead and kind of highlight the correct answer. And yes, most of you got this right.
Yeah,
Yeah, so, and I think, but I already explained this,
yeah,
right? In the
yeah. So
previous example.
correct. So this is an example of reinforcement learning. So you will reinforce and learn based on what feedback you get, whether it is correct. If it's correct, you get a reward. If it's incorrect, there's a penalty. Yeah. So I think you don't need explanation there.
All right, let's move on to the next question then. And this is the final question, folks.
Okay.
And I guess one of the easiest ones. All right, I think we have most of the responses, and that is correct. That is indeed the right answer.
Yes.
Does it require any explanation? I
I don't
think
think so. Yeah.
AI is the top level. Within AI, you have ML, and within ML, you have a subset called deep learning, right? So that's the kind of thing we generally get started with. So, and it looks like everybody got that right. So perfect, folks. Thank you so much for your participation. And
Thank you, everyone.
yeah, let me stop. Let us know, by the way, because this is something new we have started, right? You have seen this in the last session and then today. Should we continue with this kind of activity? Or what do you think about it, right? So let us know here, Discord, your comments later on. Feel free. So
Yeah.
let me stop that.
So let us
And
know whether you enjoyed this kind of quiz.
Great. And with
Yeah,
that,
Prasad, you
we
can take
end
over.
the eight. Yeah, with that, we end the eight sessions of this batch, all right? And we deliberately kept it 8 week this time because now doing any more weeks will first of all clash into reinvent and then the holiday season. So historically, BESA has been 12-week sessions, but this time we tried it as a 8 weeks. So we would also like to know from you, what would you prefer, 8 weeks or 12 weeks? Because we understand 12 weeks might be too much a commitment, but then in 8 weeks there is limited amount that we can cover. We'll try and continue doing, like, 2 BESA sessions per year. We'll see how it goes based on the bandwidth from all of us, and based on the participation. So we'll
right.
keep doing that. But yeah, in between that also, you have all the recordings of the previous batches. Feel free to continue watching them whenever you need to kind of refresh your knowledge. And that's why we created the Discord channel also, so that we can have the conversation ongoing. We all can help each other. Yeah, and for a few of you folks, I know that few of you folks have already registered, but we also have a big tech interview preparation a workshop coming up that I am doing just after reInvent. That's a 9-day workshop. I'll talk about that a bit more in a moment, but I'll let Sharik and Parna share their thoughts on the whole BESA season.
I mean, for me, it was wonderful always, just like always. And yeah, so we would be now, I think this is the time when we are more interested in what went well, anything you would like to change. And again, this is not the end, this is the end of this cohort, but you can engage with us in LinkedIn group, you can engage with Discord, all those channels. You have multiple channels to engage with us. So let us know how it was. Keep continuing the discussion. And what we will do is, of course, I think we haven't decided on date yet. But tentatively, this is going to be sometime maybe January. That's the time we're looking at for next cohort, right? So
Q1, we'll try
at
at least,
Yeah.
start somewhere around the Q1.
yeah, sometime in January, and probably a mid of January, end of January. So again, we'll see how it goes and what are the things available. So keep on doing that. I see one question from Lucia. How can we know the score of, I think,
Yeah,
Lucia?
everybody was looking forward to the leadership board.
Yeah, no, actually, I purposely did not do that,
Yeah,
folks, because this was more about engagement, and unfortunately, we did not have any kind of prizes as well. Probably we could have thought
yeah.
of that to give you a prize. Probably we'll do that next time. This is again a learning for us. But what I can do is there is one link which is, again, this is from Ashish's. The treasure trove he has got.
This quiz.
So similar quiz, like some other questions actually I took from there. So this should be available for everybody. And if you want to test yourself, and this gives you a nice platform, nice UI, and you can complete the quiz and then review the questions. You can do that again if you want, right? So as I said, I think about 30-40% questions will overlap, but there would be some other questions as well. You will find it there. So just keep that bookmark, that link with you, and test it later on if you want to continue and test again. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, so yeah, the floor is all yours, Prasad and Verna. Thank you.
No, I also thoroughly enjoyed the last 8 weeks. And folks, if you are going to give the exam and if you are going to be celebrating, I'm sure all of you all are going to be passing it with flying colors. Please tag Besa, let us know whether that helped you. It feels great that after putting the efforts, if it's helped you in some way. So keep connecting with us. And yeah, and give
Interesting.
suggestions also, like you gave a suggestion to have more quizzes like this. Any other suggestions?
Right. I think some of you,
Yeah,
some of you
Discord.
actually do that, where you tag us and you provide sort of a summary of on LinkedIn. That's really helpful, highly appreciated. Please do that, folks. Please continue to do that. That's what I want to say.
Yes. Yeah, that's very true, actually, Sharik. Actually, this helps us spread the word. And
Yeah.
as you know, all the content is free. So the more you spread the word, the more people will get benefited and more people will join the community. And so that the more people will be able to engage with each other and help each other. And if there was a question that whether Discord channel will be active. Yes, it will be active. We all will continue, till the time we meet again next for the next BESA session, somewhere around Q1. Definitely, let's keep interacting on the Discord channel. And yeah, we have a workshop coming. I'll talk about that. But Sharik, let's also very quickly talk about NovuSpark and any training initiatives that we are planning there.
Oh yes, definitely, definitely. So let me put that link for everyone's benefit. So and again, this is like kind of a work in progress, folks. So you might see not very, slick website yet. We are working on that, but that's a website I have been working on with a couple of folks. There are some ex-AWS people involved here as well. We have a few plans generally in the training and consulting space. So once again, it would be really helpful if you spread the word. Go ahead, check on LinkedIn, subscribe the channel. Just follow the channel rather. And I will be kind of pushing in the next 2 or 3 months. There are a lot of things which are coming up, what we are planning, and all we need is definitely your support. That's all. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah,
Great.
cool.
And Prasad's workshop is also
Yes.
coming up. Maybe you would like to talk about that.
Yeah, I'll share my screen quickly, and I see a few of the people in the chat here, they're already, enrolled for it, and thank you so much for enrolling. But this is more about specifically for people who are looking to, I would say, land a job in Mang in 2025. This particular workshop that I am planning, it's a 9-day cohort. It will be a completely hands-on workshop. The first 2 days I'll be delivering, and I'll talk about a lot of, uh, best practices about how you should be preparing your star format stories and interviewing for the man companies. But rest of the days, it will be the participants who will be writing their own stories and practicing their own stories. So it's all about like what we would cover mainly is how to deliver high impact responses in star format, how to craft compelling technical achievement stories, how you can effectively communicate leadership experiences, how you can blend technical depth with strong leadership behaviors. What I see in my interviewing experience and most people who get rejected at man companies is not because of their technical skills, but because they're not able to articulate their experiences. And that's what this particular workshop would be focusing on. And I launched this workshop around 3-4 weeks ago, and somehow Maven platform on which the workshop is, they picked it up to be in the fast track, and they are providing 25% discount for a few
Wow.
of the workshop on their platform, and they picked up this workshop also. So I'm pretty pleased with that.
You want to share the link, Prasad?
Yes. Let me share the link here in the chat. Anyone who's interested, go through it. If you have any questions on the workshop, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or feel free to send an email. So yeah, and what I'll do is that what this workshop is not, I'm going to talk specifically about, if you're looking for this workshop is not going to help you with any of your technical things. It's not going to help you with technical data structure algorithms, interview preparation course. It's not going to help you with system design interview preparation course. It's not a technical interview. It assumes that you have those technical knowledge, right? You already got those skills. It's now you are about how you can present those skills in interviews at Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Google, like these big companies, so that you can get hired at those companies. So it really talks about that. And yes, there is a day-wise syllabus. I let everyone look into it, but you can click here to expand and see what exactly is being covered in each of the sessions. And we'll go quite in detail. We'll provide you examples about how a good looks like. And in the day two, similarly, we'll do that. But then that's where take-home exercise comes into picture. We'll be providing with you templates and worksheets to create your own stories. And the rest of all the 7 days would be practice, 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 and practice. It will be you who will be speaking, and I'll be listening and providing feedback about, and in the last days also, it will be mock interviews. We'll cover stories like, success stories, failure stories, conflict stories, leadership stories. We'll cover all those different kinds of stories in mock interviews, and we'll help each other in raising the bar. That's what I would say. So that is planned for the end of December. Anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to me regarding this. And then mostly in Q1, we'll also definitely catch up for another business session. And in the meanwhile, look out from Sharik for more training courses from Novus Park.
Definitely.
Awesome.
All right.
That's all that I had to share.
All right. Thank you, everyone. So, should we wrap up? Prasad doesn't want to leave.
Yes. No, I think we are way over time, and Ashish tried to join us. He is traveling somewhere in the world. He's in different city every
He's
week.
become a gypsy now.
Yeah, but he did take out time to join us so that I can say hi to folks, in the last session. And anyways, me, Sharik, Parna has been throughout there, and thanks to all other volunteers like Shashank and Dennis joined us,
Divyanshi.
Divyanshi joined us, and therefore other folks who joined us. And thank you to all the participants who have been joining every week. It has been a pleasure hosting and an honor hosting all of you. Thank you so much.
Definitely. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.